Hello, and welcome back to Felony Spectator. I am your host, Heather. On today's episode, we're talking about Ellen Greenberg, who was reported to have committed suicide alone in her apartment by stabbing herself 20 times. This case has a lot of strange inconsistencies, so I definitely want to know what you guys think. Ellen Greenberg was born June 23rd, 1983, and was 27 years old at the time of her death. She was an only child to Josh and Sandra Greenberg. Ellen was working as a grade 1 teacher at Yanita Park Academy in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and was said to be bubbly, energetic, and really made people feel welcome. She was a very warm person, and most people who met her really liked her. Ellen was in a relationship with a man named Sam Goldberg, and they shared an apartment together in the lower northwest section of Philadelphia in Manayunk. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. Ellen and Sam were engaged and were in the process of planning their wedding. Ellen had already tried on wedding dresses, and they had very recently sent out their save the date cards for their wedding for August of 2011. The wedding was something that Ellen should have been excited for, but a few weeks before she mailed out those save the date cards, she started to become more withdrawn. She also seemed less independent according to her parents, meaning that she was constantly consulting with Sam on relatively easy decisions. She'd tell people, "I have to check with Sam," or "I need to ask Sam," on things she could have easily decided for herself. This could have seemed like cold feet or wedding nerves to some, but to people that knew her well, thought it was something more. Ellen had sent a text message to her parents that read, quote, "I want to leave this place. Get me out," end quote. She also had randomly asked a cousin who lived in Philly if she could temporarily move in with her. And this cousin was confused and asked if Sam would be joining her, but Ellen didn't respond. Her cousin did try and speak with Ellen again later on, but Ellen didn't elaborate as to why she wanted to leave home. This was all very concerning to Ellen's parents, so they suggested that Ellen seek professional help, and Ellen agreed. Her first visit to a psychiatrist would be January 11th, and we'll talk more about these visits later on because they're kind of important. 9 days after her first appointment on January 26, 2011, Ellen spoke to her mother around 7 a.m. before they headed off to work. And this is normal. They call each other all the time as they were quite close. So Ellen goes to work at her teaching job, but a snowstorm hit that day and school closed down early for the safety of the staff and students. Ellen is then seen putting gas in her car around 1:26 p.m. before going home. Then at 2:30, she calls Vetri Restaurant. And there isn't any information on what this call was about, so maybe she was asking their hours, maybe making or canceling a reservation. We just don't know. While at home a little while later, she logged into her computer around 4:46 p.m. Sam, her fiance, was home, but he goes to the gym between 4:40 and 4:45. And this gym is located on the first floor of the Venice Loft Apartments where they lived. Sam then leaves the gym no later than 5:30. According to Sam, when he got back to the apartment, the door was locked. He had his keys, but when he tried to open the door, the metal latch on the inside was on, so he couldn't get into the apartment. Sam would allegedly call out for Ellen, but she didn't respond. Between 5:30 and 5:55, he sends her emails, tries to phone her, and sent her text messages asking her to come to the door. And some of these text messages read, "Hello, open the door. What are you doing? I'm getting pissed. Hello, you better have an excuse. What the fuck? You have no idea." As you can see, his messages were getting more and more frustrated. At some point, Sam also goes downstairs to ask the security guard if he had a tool that he could borrow to break in. The guard didn't, so Sam asks the security guard if he could come upstairs and help him break in. Sam later states that the security guard went up to the 6th floor with him to help him break into the apartment, and we will come back to this as well. Then at approximately 6:31, Sam calls 911. Now, he called 911 because when he finally got into the apartment, in the kitchen to his left, he would see Ellen on the floor dead. Here is the 911 call.
Help, I need a Now, I just walked to my apartment. My fiance's on the floor with blood everywhere.
What is the address?
4601 Flat Rock Road. Please come help now.
4601
Flat Rock Road.
Is this a house or apartment?
Oh no! Oh no!
Apartment.
It's an apartment.
What apartment number?
603.
Apartment 603.
603. Please hurry, please.
Where is she bleeding from?
I don't know. I can't tell. She's.
No, sir, you have to calm yourself down in order to get you some help.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm looking at her right now. I can't see anything. There's nothing broken. She's bleeding. Ellie.
You don't know where she's bleeding from? Can't tell where
Ellie.
the blood's coming from?
I think her head. I think she hit her head, But it's everywhere.
Okay, sir,
it's everywhere.
Think she might have fallen? Do you know what happened?
She may have slipped. There's blood on the table. Her face is a little purple.
Okay, hold on for rescue for her. Stay on the phone.
Philadelphia Fire Department 842. What's the address? No,
4601 Flat Rock Road. Please hurry.
4601 Flat Rock?
Yes.
What's wrong?
I went downstairs to go work out. I came back up. The door was latched. My fiance's inside. She wasn't answering. So after about a half hour, I decided to break it down. I see her now just on the floor with blood. She's not responding.
Okay, is she breathing? Look at her chest. I need you to calm down, and I need you to look at her chest. It's really.
I don't think she. I really don't think she is.
Listen to me. Someone's on the way. Look at her chest. Is she flat on her back?
She's on her back. So I bring her.
Look at her chest and tell me if it's going up and down, up and down.
I don't see her moving.
Okay. Do you know how to do CPR?
I don't.
Okay, I can tell you what to do. Okay, until they get there. I want you to keep her flat on her.
God.
Hello.
Yeah, hi, okay.
Are you willing to do CPR with me over the phone until they get there?
I have to, right?
Okay, so get her flat on her back, bare her chest, okay? You want to rip her shirt off.
Oh, shit.
Okay? You need to kneel down by her side.
Oh, my God. Ellie, please.
Listen, you can't freak out, sir, because you
Okay, I'm trying not to. Her shirt won't come off. It's a zipper. Oh, my God. She stabbed herself.
Where?
She fell with a knife. Oh, no, her knife's sticking out.
Her what?
There's a knife sticking out of her heart.
Oh, she stabbed herself?
I guess so. I don't know where she fell on it. I don't know.
Okay, well, don't touch it.
Okay, so I just let her here now? I mean, what do I do?
No, I mean, you can't. If the knife is in her chest, it's going to be kind of hard for you to do CPR at this time.
Oh, no. Oh, my goodness. Okay.
Police, which operator?
277.
Is someone coming here?
Yes, they are. You said 4601 Flat Rock, right?
Yes.
Okay, someone's on the way. And the knife is still inside?
Wait, so what?
The knife is still inside of her?
Yes, I didn't take it out.
Was it her chest or what area?
It's in her chest. It looks like it's right in her heart.
Okay, someone's on the way out there. Okay, just get.
Oh my God! Oh my God! Okay,
how old is she?
She's 27.
27, and there's no sign of life at all.
No, please don't be. What?
Pinch her under her arm and tell me if she responds to pain.
Ellie. She's not. Her arm, her hands are still warm. I don't know what that means, but there's blood everywhere.
I know, but you can't, and the knife is still inside of her. How far? Can you see how far it went in?
It looks pretty deep.
Okay.
It looks it's a long knife.
Don't touch anything.
Yeah, don't touch anything, okay?
I'm not touching anything. I can't believe this, though.
So wait, it was just you there with her?
We're the only ones here.
And she ran in the door, you said latched it shut?
No, I went downstairs to work out, and when I came back up, the door was latched.
Oh.
Like, it was, it wasn't like, it was like locked from the inside, and I'm yelling. So I'm
was your
yelling.
House broken into?
No.
So there's no sign of a break-in?
No sign of a break-in at all. I mean, there will be when you get here because I had to break the latch, but to get in.
Okay, 4601 Flat Rock, and this is a house, right?
It's an apartment. Flat Rock, apartment 603.
Okay, that'll help. Apartment 603.
Oh my God. All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.
Now, we all act differently under stressful situations, but A lot of people question why Sam sounds like he doesn't really want to do CPR on his fiancée. He also doesn't know where Ellen is bleeding from or notice the knife sticking out of her chest, even though he had just told the operator he was looking right at her chest to see if she was breathing. It wasn't until he's asked to take Ellen's shirt off to perform CPR does he suddenly see this knife. To me and a lot of other people, he also sounds very relieved when he's told not to do CPR and calms down quite a bit from this point on. Another thing that has been criticized is the fact that he says she stabbed herself or she must have fallen on a knife instead of she's been stabbed or I don't know what happened. Why is his first instinct to assume it was self-inflicted? So 911 dispatches EMS, but minutes before EMS show up, Sam's cousin, Camion Schwartzman, arrives to the apartment. And not only is he a cousin, but Camion is also a lawyer and friends with Sam. Also, at some point, Camion's dad, Judge James Schwartzman, arrives to the scene. Judge James Schwartzman is a former U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. At the time of Ellen's death, he was a judge of ethics, so to speak. So from what I understand, he makes sure lawyers are ethically doing their jobs. He is also involved to some capacity in Philadelphia politics. So just know he's an important person. Now I'm going to jump backwards a little bit and let you know the calls Sam made prior to calling 911. So according to Sam, he leaves the gym around 5:30. He's seen going up the elevator at 5:31. Then he finds the door locked. He calls out, sends some text messages, and comes back down to talk to security. He's then seen on camera at 6:10. So that's 40 minutes where he's apparently outside the apartment in the hallway trying to get in. He's then seen going back up the elevator at 6:13. He also calls Camion, his cousin, at 6:14. Then he comes back downstairs and at 6:26, before calling 911, he gets a call from Camion's dad, Judge Schwartzman. This call actually takes place downstairs on the first floor. He is seen on security footage walking around the front of the elevators. Then he goes into the elevator and minutes later calls 911. Camion shows up at 6:35, about 3 minutes before EMS. I should mention that I think the timestamps on the security footage are about a minute fast, even maybe closer to 2 minutes. But the timeline and these phone calls is interesting. EMS would arrive and pronounce Ellen dead on scene at 6:40. It said before Ellen was taken away, it was Sam, his cousin Camion, Judge James Schwartzman, EMS, and police all inside the apartment. The apartment isn't that big, so I can only imagine how chaotic that would be. Another thing to note that EMS was never interviewed in the course of the investigation, even though they were the first to arrive on scene. But Sam's family all allegedly spoke with police while in the apartment. Police would inform Judge Schwartzman that Sam didn't need an attorney yet, but they would take Sam away in handcuffs to be questioned at the station. There are witnesses who allegedly hear Sam saying to the concierge, quote, "Tell them I didn't do this. Tell them I didn't do this," while being taken out of the apartment in handcuffs. At the station, Sam gave a brief statement, which I believe was similar to what he said on the 911 call, which was he was at the gym, came back to the apartment to the door latched, and that the security guard came back up the elevator with him and helped him break into the apartment. After Sam gave his brief statement, he then refused to talk and he wanted an attorney. In the States, investigators have to stop an interview if someone asks for legal representation. Medical examiners would also come to the apartment and note that Ellen was still fully clothed in a t-shirt, sweatpants, underwear, a zippered shirt, and Ugg boots. There was blood on her head, in her hair, the front of her shirt, the front of her pants, and the top of both boots. So all the blood was down her front. There was stab wounds in the back of her head and neck area, but there's no mention of blood dripping down her back. Her glasses were on the floor and she was sort of propped up against the lower kitchen cabinets. Her back and her head were leaning against those cabinets. A white towel was also said to be grasped in her left hand. On the counter was a half-made fruit salad, so Ellen was in the middle of making herself something to eat. Also on the counter, the knife block was toppled over and some of the knives had fallen out into the sink. There was mention of dried blood coming from Ellen's nose area, dripping sideways to her ear, which is interesting because she was apparently propped up on the corner of the kitchen cabinets. That means the blood should have been dripping down, not sideways. Now, Sam had said in the 911 call that she was on her back. He also didn't seem to want to touch her. So when did she go from laying on her back to being propped up on the cabinets? And who did that and why? Nobody took Ellen's temperature when they pronounced her dead, so the time of Ellen's death isn't conclusive. It's assumed that she died during the 45 minutes when Sam was at the gym. Had they taken a temperature, we might have found a more accurate time frame in which she died. Strangely, Philly police treated Ellen's death as a suicide immediately after speaking with Sam's family and after hearing Sam's statement at the station, in which he mentioned that Ellen was suicidal. It was also based on Sam telling them that the door was latched when he returned from the gym, and police also believed that the security guard witnessed Sam break into the apartment. But they didn't actually speak with the security guard. Interestingly, the security guard would later say that he never left his post that evening as per protocol. He isn't allowed to break into apartments and declined assisting Sam. In June of 2021, the security guard signed a declaration that he did not go upstairs ever. He remembers that Sam had come to the concierge area and mentioned that he was at the gym and was locked out of his apartment. The security guard in his declaration states that he did not go to the apartment. He did not observe Sam enter his apartment, and he stayed at his post at the concierge desk. He is not allowed to help people break into their apartments. CCTV also doesn't support Sam's statement that the security guard left the front desk. The only time you see Sam going up the elevator, he's alone. I have personally looked through all the footage, and security did not go up the elevator. This means there are no witnesses as to when Sam actually entered the apartment. Now, Sam claims he had to break the door latch to get in, so let's look at that latch. As you can see, it's still basically intact. There's no damage to the door frame, just a small amount of damage on the actual door, but the latch is still attached to the door. I will let you determine if you think that he could open the door with the latch still on. Now, maybe he reached a little finger in there and pushed the latch open. Maybe he used a credit card or a key. But if he was desperate to get in and was already kicking the door down, why not just finish it off? One more kick or body check would have broken it off, and he could have easily walked right in. The following morning, before Ellen's autopsy was even complete, Judge Schwartzman called the building manager of the apartments and requested access so that he could get one of Sam's suits for Ellen's funeral. Now, they're Jewish, so they prefer to have their funerals within 24 hours of someone passing. Melissa, the building manager, would phone police to ask if this was okay because she thought that this was still a crime scene. The police surprisingly said yes, that it was fine, and they also informed her that she could go ahead and get the apartment cleaned as they had everything that they needed. Police provided her with the name of a crime scene cleaning company so she could make those arrangements herself. Melissa, the apartment manager, calls Judge Schwartzman back and tells him yes, he can come to the apartment, and the police also informed her that she can arrange to have it cleaned. Judge Schwartzman thinks that's great and offers to pay for it and tells Melissa to go ahead and have it cleaned today. So Melissa organizes the cleaning company to come that same day. But before they arrive, she takes a quick video recording of the state of the apartment. And this was for her own personal documentation for insurance purposes, basically to protect them from any theft or damages in the result of a third party entering the premises. Judge Schwartzman would show up with Camion, his son, the lawyer. They take a suit for Sam like they said they would, but they also take cell phones, Ellen's work and personal laptops, Ellen's handbag, her keys, her wallet, and credit cards without permission. Another thing that happens the same day, the medical examiner, Dr. Marlon Osborne, concludes that Ellen's death to be a homicide. So now police have to scramble to apply for a search warrant to re-enter the apartment. The warrant gets issued, but not until the next morning. So on October 28th at 10:51, the following day, police execute the search warrant and enter the apartment. They take some clothes, blood samples, apparently, a diamond ring, fingerprints, and a Rubbermaid container. But this was after the apartment was professionally cleaned by crime scene cleaners. This means the crime scene is completely contaminated at this point, and whatever blood samples they found came back inconclusive. While police were at the apartment, Melissa informs them of the video she took prior to the cleanup, and they request that video from her, which she hands over. This video has since gone missing. Another frustrating thing is that the police didn't receive the laptops or cell phones back from Judge Schwartzman until the 29th, the day after they executed their search warrant and 2 days after they removed those items from the apartment. So nothing has gone right. The chain of command has been broken, the crime scene was compromised, and police still think it's a suicide even though it was ruled a homicide by the medical examiner. Forensics did go through Ellen's computer, even though it was taken from the apartment without permission and returned to police 2 days later. Police decided that based on Ellen's search history, that it confirmed she was suicidal. Suffocation, suicide methods, sex fantasy death, Zoloft, Prozac, sertraline weight gain, depression, bath death, electrocuted to death trying to use Twitter in the bath, which is very specific, quick suicide, euthanasia, and painless suicide. I looked at the document, and the girl electrocuted trying to use Twitter in the bathtub is from the Inquisitor, a news website, and as far as I could see, it wasn't searched. It looks like it was maybe linked from a Google ad or clickbait, but I'm not an expert. She also researched antidepressant medication that she was prescribed, so to me that doesn't seem out of the ordinary. Lots of people want to know more information on what medications they're taking. Ellen had seen a new psychiatrist as of January 12th, who had her switch to Xanax. She also saw her on January 17th, and it was noted that she was overwhelmed and having difficulty with work. They also thought Ellen wasn't suicidal. Then on January 19th, it's noted that she was feeling, quote, way better. Again, Ellen wasn't suicidal or depressed, but was experiencing anxiety. She would be prescribed Ambien and Clozapine to help her sleep. After taking her new prescriptions, Ellen had sent her mom a text saying Clozapine helped, thank God. There was another appointment for January 27th scheduled, which was the day after her death. The day of her death, she had responded to an email saying, thank goodness, to a friend who commented that her school was closing early due to the snowstorm. Now remember, Ellen was stressed at work, so she was relieved to go home early. This day, Ellen had also electronically submitted grades for her first grade students. If you know anyone who is a teacher, you'll know that teaching in itself is very stressful, and it is even more stressful when it's time to do report cards or grades. Teachers are just overworked, and this is mostly what Ellen discussed with her therapist as well, as far as we know. But no one would have guessed that Ellen would have taken her life in such a horrific way. The autopsy was signed by Dr. Marlon Osborne, assistant medical examiner, and this would show you just how horrific it was. In the report, it summarizes that Ellen was a 27-year-old female who had a history of anxiety, and this anxiety diagnosis was based off of her medical records. Ellen had multiple stab wounds to her chest, abdomen, back of the neck, and I believe the original examination mentioned only 10 stab wounds. A knife was present in one of the chest wounds at a depth of 10 centimeters. There was mention of an incised wound to the right occipital scalp, which means a straight, clean cut to the back of the head, sort of where that shelf area is, but more to the right side. There was wounds to the aortic arch, which is the heart area, the left lung, and liver. Now remember, she had blood dripping down her front, which would have come from these injuries. It further explains that the body had no fractures, nose wasn't broken, lips are atraumatic, meaning no trauma, oral cavity had no injuries, tongue, no injuries, teeth are all in good repair, and the extremities have no fractures. The toxicology report came back with nothing except trace amounts of her prescriptions. The report goes into more details and mentions a stab wound between C2 and C3 vertebrae of Ellen's spinal column. And this wound pierced the dura and implicated the spinal cord. The dura is a thick membrane that surrounds the brain and spinal cord area. And it was this wound that led Dr. Osborne to originally determine Ellen's death to be a homicide. He would remove and preserve 8.5 centimeters of the spinal column where this wound occurred. Dr. Osborne also noted that an 8-centimeter deep wound at the base of Ellen's skull impacted her cerebellum. Let me repeat that. 8-centimeter wound at the base of Ellen's skull. That's about this long. That's really deep to the back of her head and neck area. The cerebellum is part of the brain that is responsible for balance, movement, and vision. Dr. Osborne also preserved portions of Ellen's cerebellum. The death certificate on January 27th listed Ellen's cause of death by being multiple stab wounds and the cause of the injuries as stabbed by another person. Philly police saw the report and immediately encouraged Dr. Osborne to change the manner of death to pending rather than homicide while they concluded their investigation. NBC reported on January 27th that the Philly Police Department didn't consider Ellen's death a homicide and were looking into all possibilities, including suicide. To me, that sounds interesting because if a medical examiner thinks someone died by homicide based on their injuries, how do you argue that? Why were police feeding that to the media? There would also be a meeting with the Philadelphia Police Department, the district attorney's office, and the chief medical office. And they both shared the information they each had and their theories. The police suggested suicide, and this decision was made mostly on Sam's statement that the door was locked when he came back to the apartment. Neighbors apparently didn't hear a commotion, no screaming, and security footage didn't show anyone else that could possibly be an intruder. They also noted that the security person accompanied Sam to the apartment to help break down the door, which we later found out didn't actually happen. After that meeting on April 4th, 2011, the medical examiner changed their findings from homicide. Dr. Osborne later claimed that this was the first time in his entire career that the police department has ever requested a cause of death to be changed. Nonetheless, it was changed and the case closed. The death certificate was then edited. The injury to the brain was now no defect upon examination, and the damage to the spinal cord was said to be false. Why was this changed? The reasoning was a neuropathologist named Dr. Rorik Adams reviewed the injury and determined it inconsequential, according to Dr. Osborne. Ellen's parents were extremely shocked to hear this and don't understand how injuries suddenly become inconsequential. After reviewing the original autopsy report, it also failed to mention 10 other stab wounds to the back of Ellen's head. Those were added afterwards. It also implied that the majority of Ellen's wounds were superficial, like scratches or surface wounds. And that wasn't true either, as some were 2 centimeters deep, others were 3 centimeters deep, and the big ones were upwards of 8 to 10 centimeters deep. At the time of Ellen's death, the medical examiner's office didn't have a neuropathologist on staff. It was explained by Dr. Osborne that Dr. Lucy Rorik Adams, an expert regularly used by the office, did the findings on the spinal cord. Remember, it was apparently her who said the brain and spinal injuries were now inconsequential. But Dr. Rorik Adams has claimed that she doesn't remember doing this, nor is there any record of her being commissioned to study Ellen's spinal column at all. Dr. Rorik Adams always generates a report or a bill for her services. If there's no bill or report, she says she did not do the work. This to me is very alarming. The Greenbergs were very confused by everything, so they would hire a company called Biomedics Consulting to help them figure out what happened. This company created mock-ups of the stabbing. They wanted to know if it was even possible for Ellen to do any of these injuries to herself. And guess what? They concluded that it wasn't possible that the wounds on the back of Ellen's head were self-inflicted. They talk about the mechanics of the body, they took her measurements and the size and length of this knife, and the angles of the injuries, and it's just not possible. There is a YouTube video by Gavin Fish who has his wife try and imitate the stabbings. She is roughly the same size as Ellen and is quite flexible as she regularly does yoga, and she struggles with these angles. The angles are so awkward that it would be nearly impossible to get the momentum or strength to push a knife 8 centimeters deep into the back of the skull. The Greenbergs would also hire their own neuropathologist who would study everything, including the sample of the spinal cord that was saved after the original autopsy. There were 2 stab wounds on the back of Ellen's neck that were at a very awkward angle. Now remember, the original autopsy mentioned C2 and C3. Now if you Google C2 spinal cord injury, the first thing that comes up is that it will cause pain, tingling, numbness, weakness in the arms or legs, loss of bowel, bladder control, and other problems. Severe cases can be fatal. The specialist thought her cranial cavity had been penetrated and her spinal cord severed. This means that she wouldn't have been able to fight someone off or continue stabbing herself. The final stab was to the chest, and it was massive, 10 centimeters deep through her ribs. A lot of strength would have been needed, so someone else must have been there with her. It further talks about the size of the wounds, the direction of the wounds, the depth and basic appearance, which are referred to as stab wound A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H of chest, I of abdomen, J of scalp, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T of the neck. She had almost an entire alphabet of injuries. N, E, H, and I, those 4 were very, very deep. E being the final wound and the deepest to the chest. There were bruises found all over her body as well in various shades of healing. Contusions to the right upper arm, her right forearm had 3 round contusions. Right lower abdomen had 3 contusions. The right thigh had a vertical row of round contusions that were 2.5 to 3 centimeters. Above the right knee, there were 3 round contusions. The Greenbergs neuropathologist also found evidence of strangulation as well, and none of this is on the original report. The examiner also found that there was no bleeding in some of the injuries, no internal hemorrhaging, which should happen every time someone cuts themselves. There is typically an internal hemorrhage before your body starts to repair itself to stop the bleeding. This basically proves that Ellen was already dead before some of her injuries. Now, she can't stab herself if she's already dead. Ellen's parents also remember that Ellen was a very squeamish person. She hated blood. She chickened out when they got her ears pierced as a child. They don't think that if Ellen wanted to harm herself, that this is how she would do it. Granted, we don't know why people do the things that they do when they're mentally broken, but this just doesn't seem like Ellen. On October 29th of 2019, the Greenbergs filed a lawsuit against the Philadelphia Medical Examiner's Office, accusing the investigation to be sloppy. They wanted the autopsy results to be overturned and instead be ruled a homicide or at least undetermined. This past August of 2022, Ellen's parents released another statement saying, quote, "She had defensive wounds on her wrists that went unacknowledged in the original autopsy. Her body had been moved and her left hand was gripping a knife in her chest, even though she was right-handed." End quote. I should point out that this differs from the original statement saying that she was holding a white towel in her left hand, which I find interesting, and I don't know why that was changed. They also pointed out that the blood on her face was not dripping in the right direction, proving that she was moved. They also provided a note about Dr. Marlon Osborne, showing that he has also been reprimanded many times in the past for doing poor autopsies by missing very obvious injuries on other patients. It points out that Dr. Osborne missed almost half of Ellen's injuries and further references 11 different cases where there was huge discrepancies in Dr. Osborne's findings. For example, a case where there was a stab wound and he wrote that there was no internal injuries when there obviously was. Or another time when he examined a gun wound and wrote there was no injuries to the victim's scalp, lips, tongue, or back when there was injuries to all of these locations. This note does mention improvements in his work, but it also proves that he doesn't always do his due diligence in reviewing cases. As of September 2022, the Chester County District Attorney announced it was reviewing Ellen's case. And then in October, a new lawsuit was filed suing individual employees of the Philly Police Department, Medical Examiner's Office, and DOA for willful misconduct to conceal a homicide. I would like to mention that Ellen's family has never once pointed a finger at Sam specifically, ever. In fact, they actually remained in touch with him for over a year after Ellen passed, until he got married and moved to New York. All they want now is for the death certificate to say homicide and those responsible for covering up the crime to be disciplined. They also haven't accused Sam's family members for anything either. They're just going after people that they can prove had something to do with how the case was handled. I will have to keep you updated on this case and where it goes. My thoughts? First, I want to say that when I was researching, I was trying to find documents, photos, newspaper articles, and it wasn't easy until I found Gavin Fish. He does the deepest dives into true crime cases. My episode gives you a lot of information, but if you want even more information and more of the political side of the case, which is also very interesting, go to Gavin's website and check it out. The CCTV footage I used was also from Gavin, and he has even posted it online as well. And he has loads of documents, so you can really pick apart this case if you want to. Now, this whole situation is so upsetting for Ellen's family. I just feel so terrible for them. Having to live with the death of their daughter and now having to fight for answers is just too much. To me, it's obviously a homicide, so much so that it's actually laughable that anyone would try and cover it up. Now, if I'm way off and this wasn't a cover-up, that means the investigation was so sloppy and so horrible that it left far too many unanswered questions. So regardless, someone needs to be held accountable. They obviously shouldn't be working in law enforcement. But those unanswered questions to me seem more like a cover-up. If the most likely suspect in this case didn't do it, these powerful people wouldn't be putting energy into squashing the investigation. They'd be putting energy into clearing that person's name and getting justice for his dead fiancé. Would they not want the most thorough forensic investigation, have the top-tier detective working on the case? But that didn't happen. I do stand with the Greenbergs that someone needs to be held accountable. There absolutely needs to be a new investigation, or at a minimum, her cause of death needs to be changed. Sadly, at this point, even if someone does come forward now and confirms a cover-up, it still would be nearly impossible for anyone to be convicted because all the evidence is either gone or compromised, which is really frustrating. I also feel like the main people responsible for the cover-up probably would never be held accountable. Someone else will take the fall, like the medical examiner, or a lower-level officer will be blamed for being sloppy. The powerful people will most likely be safe. I'd love to know your theory, or does anyone out there think this was a suicide and we're just jumping to conclusions? Thanks again for joining me here at Felony Spectator. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and we will see you again soon.